That is not mine. I remember shouting those words, but at that moment, they felt as hollow as my hope of convincing anyone. It was too neat, too perfect a trap, and I had walked right into it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. That comes later. It all started in a place where I was the master, the unseen, a place where I was as comfortable as a fish in water. The dark web. My name is Alex, and if you've ever dipped your toes into the shadowy waters of the dark web, you might cross paths with me. Not that you'd know it. I'm what you'd call a veteran, a navigator of the net's underbelly, adept at weaving through its layers of obscurity and encryption like it's second nature. I spent nights debating, exploring, and sometimes just watching. Anonymity was my cloak, and I wielded it with the finesse of a seasoned duelist. But that night, the night that would start the unraveling, I was in the mood for a battle of wits. I found it on a forum known for its notoriety, a digital coliseum for the most vehement and unyielding minds. The argument was heated, the kind that leaves your fingers flying across the keyboard, your heart racing, and your mind electrified. It was with a user whose handle I knew all too well, CipherShadow. Our exchanges were legendary, and this one was shaping up to be a duel for the ages. As the debate spiraled, the attacks became personal, the insults sharper, each of us trying to outdo the other. I felt a rush, a high, a sense of invincibility as I typed my final retort, something so cutting, so decisive, that I knew it would leave CipherShadow reeling. I hit send and leaned back, the glow of the screen illuminating my smirk of triumph. But victory is often the prelude to downfall. As I basked in the afterglow, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I had gone too far, ventured too deep, and something told me that this was not the end of it. I tried to shake the feeling, to tell myself it was just another win, but the seed of dread had been planted. Little did I know, it was about to sprout into a nightmare that would consume my world. I shut down for the night, the uneasy feeling lingering like the aftertaste of a bitter pill. As I lay in bed staring into the darkness, the thrill of the debate faded, replaced by the creeping tendrils of something sinister, reaching out from the very shadows I had so skillfully navigated. The memory of last night's debate had settled into the corners of my mind by morning, like the remnants of a storm cloud that threatened to burst, but never did. I was midway through my first cup of coffee, the bitter tang a welcome bite, when the knock came. It was forceful, insistent, a harbinger of chaos. "That is not mine," I yelled, but the words were drowned out by the clamor of a door being rammed open and the rush of boots on laminate flooring. My apartment, once my sanctuary, was invaded by a swarm of police officers, their badges glinting like the eyes of predators in the half-light. "What is the meaning of this?" I managed to say, my voice steady despite the adrenaline that spiked through my veins. But they weren't there for explanations. They were there for evidence. My computer, the gateway to my nocturnal escapades, was seized. I watched, as if from outside myself, while they unearthed files laced with the poison of illegality, files I had never seen nor downloaded. A sick realization curdled in my stomach. "I've never seen that before," I pleaded, my protest feeble against the stark reality of digital fingerprints that claimed otherwise. "You have to believe me." But the officer's eyes held no room for belief, only the cold reflection of duty. Handcuffs clicked around my wrists with the finality of a judge's gavel. As they led me away, the faces of my neighbors peered out from behind slightly ajar doors, a tableau of curiosity and judgment. The ride to the station was a blur, the world outside the barred windows, a streak of colors without form. My thoughts were a whirlpool, circling around one name, CipherShadow. They had taken our online skirmish into the real world, weaponized my digital footprint into a shackle more binding than any metal. At the precinct, I was processed with an efficiency that was almost impersonal. Mugshots, fingerprints, the cold sweep of a metal detector. Each step was a descent further into a nightmare I could not wake from. In a small room with walls the color of dirty snow, I waited for what came next. The ticking of the clock was a countdown to an uncertain fate. Each second, a heavy footfall in the march of time. I was alone, but not. There was another player in this game, one who had made their move with a stealth that I had to admire, even as it spelled my doom. As the door opened to admit my interrogator, I steeled myself. The real fight was about to begin. The interrogation room was a claustrophobic box, the air stale with the scent of fear and old coffee. The chair they offered was hard, the surface cold against my skin. I felt the weight of the detective's gaze, unyielding as he sat across from me, a file thick with accusations between us. I only use the dark web for debates and information, I began, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. I'm not involved with the content you found. It's not mine. I repeated the plea, a mantra against the damning evidence. The detective, a man with eyes as sharp as the questions he asked, sifted through the files with a skeptic's thoroughness. You expect me to believe that? That someone framed you for what? An online argument. His disbelief was a tangible thing, and I fought against the tide of desperation. It was more than an argument. It was a war of ideologies. But I swear, I didn't cross that line. He leaned back, the chair creaking under the shift of his weight, his expression unreadable. You're either incredibly naive or very clever, Alex. But without direct evidence linking you to the creation or distribution of this content, we can't hold you. I blinked, the words taking a moment to register. So I can go. Disbelieving. For now. But we're keeping an eye on you. Don't leave town. With those parting words, I was thrust back into the world. A free man in theory, but shackled by suspicion and fear. The door of the precinct closed behind me with the finality of a cell door. The sound a grim reminder of the narrow escape. I walked the streets, the city around me a blur. I was out, but not clear. The shadow of the dark web a cloak I could no longer shake off. CipherShadow's treachery had seen to that. I had to go back in, to dive into the murky depths once more. Not for the thrill, not for the anonymity, but for my life. The hunt was on, but was I the hunter or the prey? The dull glow of my screen was a lighthouse in the storm that had become my life. As I navigated back into the dark web's labyrinth, I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, tainted now with desperation. CipherShadow had drawn me into a game of cat and mouse, but the stakes were my very freedom. The digital trails were convoluted, a maze meant to confuse and ensnare. But I had to find the breadcrumbs. Each click was measured, every page scrutinized for the trap I knew awaited. The forums were no longer a battleground for ideas. They were minefields, each user a potential ally or enemy. I encountered shady figures, their handles flickering in and out of existence like ghosts. Offers to help came at the price of bitcoins, but their eyes held the glint of treachery. I trusted no one. In this realm, I was alone. Then came the attacks. Pop-ups with threats, my screen flickering with the visage of the skull, a sign of the digital death that loomed over me. Malware attempted to infiltrate my system, each one a silent assassin. I narrowly deflected. CipherShadow was watching, toying with me, a predator enjoying the hunt. But I pressed on, driven by the raw need to clear my name. Each clue unraveled led to another, a thread weaving through the web's darkest corners. I was close. I could feel it. The signs were there, subtle shifts in the digital undercurrent that pointed to CipherShadow's lair. As dawn crept through the cracks of my blinds, I stumbled upon a site, a mirror of the forum where it all began. It was different, distorted like a reflection in a funhouse mirror, and in its center was a message, a single line that sent chills down my spine. Looking for me. I was, and I had found something. Or it had found me. The message was a beacon, a signal that the endgame was approaching. But as I prepared to delve deeper, to finally confront CipherShadow, a knock echoed through my apartment, a foreboding sound that seemed to resonate with my racing heartbeat. The hunt was not over. It had merely shifted battlegrounds. The knock was soft, almost hesitant, but in the silence of my apartment, it thundered in my ears. I stood motionless, breath caught in my throat, my eyes fixed on the door. The digital chase had led me here, to a precipice between two worlds, and the knock was a cue for the final act. Looking for me, the message from the mirror site echoed in my mind. They were close. Perhaps just beyond the door, the anonymous adversary materialized from the shadows of the web into my reality. With cautious steps, I approached, every creak of the floorboards, a drumbeat to my racing heart. I reached for the door, my hand trembling, the cold metal of the knob a jolt to my system. I flung the door open, ready to confront my nemesis, but the hallway was empty, the silence mocking. My eyes darted to the ground where an envelope lay, innocuous yet ominous. I picked it up, the paper light in my hands but heavy with implication. Inside, a single printed line. You were always one step behind Alex. The game had changed. It wasn't just about being framed anymore. CipherShadow knew me, not just my online persona, but me, Alex. They weren't just a shadow, they were flesh and blood, and they had been closer than I had ever imagined. Panic set in, a cold, clawing thing that threatened to unravel me. I had to move, to leave, to escape the invisible eyes I felt upon me. But as I turned to pack a bag, my computer pinged it, a new message notification flashing on the screen. It was from CipherShadow. You can't run from your shadow, Alex. I realized then that this was far from over. CipherShadow was playing a game with no end, a cat with a mouse that could never escape. The knock, the message. It was all a demonstration of power, a proof that they could reach out and touch my world whenever they wished. The story doesn't end here, not really. I'm still here, still searching, still trying to outsmart the shadow that lurks just out of sight. But every knock, every unknown number, every unexpected email sends a jolt of fear through me. And somewhere out there, CipherShadow is watching, waiting, a story without an end.